100%.
Good afternoon, Mr. Amol Bhatt. And
good afternoon, sir.
And welcome to this webinar. So it's the right time to start now.
Sure.
So a warm welcome to all the participants of today's webinar under the topic Cyber Threats Year in Retrospect. As the bankers know, the threat of cyber security is a real threat, and the number of cases is increasing day by day. The last number which I have, it says that 1 in 56,000 digital transactions is fraudulent. And it is up from 59,000 in Q3 of FY22. So it means it is with the increasing number of digital transactions, number of fraudulent transaction is also increasing. And for every rupees 1 lakh of digital payment, rupees 1.45 was fraudulent. This shows the gravity of the scenario. In January 23, 10 billion retail transactions were undertaken for rupees 51 trillion rupees. And that shows the volume of the market. With this aspect in our mind, today in our series of webinars, we have arranged this webinar on cyber threats, year in retrospect, and we have requested Shri Amol Bhatt to address in this webinar. Shri Amol Bhatt is with us. He leads the cyber security team focused on the sector and is based out of Mumbai. He specializes in cyber security risk management, has among his clients the largest public and private sector banks in India. In his career spanning over decades, PwC, he has been closely associated with the murky projects such as building sectoral PRT for government. Amol has worked on various strategic initiatives around the globe, engaged as SOX compliance expert for one of the largest global oil and gas company. In addition, he has helped various financial sector regulators design and implement cybersecurity frameworks for entities regulated by them. At PwC, he has anchored the Cyber Global Delivery Center program and continues to build the team further with innovative and strategic initiatives. Amol has authored several articles and security white paper. He is a speaker and trainer at IDRBT and CAFRAL, where he regularly holds sessions on cybersecurity for senior leaders from financial sector. Amol holds a master's degree in commerce from University of Pune. He is a chartered accountant, qualified certified information system auditor, and has done 3 TP senior leader program IIM Ahmedabad. Before I hand it over to Mr. Amol Bhatt to begin with his deliberations on this subject today, I would like to place on record thanks for our team in IBA, which has taken initiative to arrange such webinars, where the banking industry gets benefit of thought processes with the expert in the industry. With this, I will request Shri Amol Bhatt to please start the webinar. And we have the facility for our viewers. They can place their comments or questions on the chat box, which can be taken up subsequently. Over to you, Shri Amol Bhatt.
So thank you, and thank you entire IBA team for giving me an opportunity to connect with all the members today. So dear members, thank you for kind of joining in, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'll just present my deck and just confirm if it is visible so that we can start. Hope the deck is visible.
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay. So, very good afternoon. What I want to cover over the next 25 to 30 minutes is how has the year been 2022 in the context of cybersecurity. So, as PwC, we have our threat lab, we have our cyber intelligence center, which is a global center in UK. And as part of that, we continue to look at a lot of trends that happen globally. Uh, some of the key trends that we will talk through today, and even before I go there, I think three or four areas that I will cover. Part A is about the report, and I will share the link with the IBA team. This will come to you, and you should be able to download the report as well on your own. B, how are we seeing some of the threats evolving globally? And part C is I'm going to talk about few case studies that we've handled just for the members' benefit. People can pose in questions. I'll try and take it at the end just so to not break the flow. With that, let's begin. So we are looking at four key trends, if I can say so, in terms of 2022. Uh, the first is in terms of the rising tension across the world in terms of defenders and cyber threats. What does it mean? It just means that as security capabilities are evolving, so are the capabilities and the dynamism of the attackers. So basically, while defenders learn, the cyber adversaries are also kind of learning how to play the game better. The second that we are seeing, and which is very, very important and pertinent, is the geopolitical issues. So we are looking at a lot of convergence of cyber with the geopolitical pressure. So whether it's the Ukraine-Russia war that started in 2022, whether it's what happening between South Korea and North Korea in terms of some of the advanced persistent threats that we see across these two boundaries, and of course how different political agendas are being driven in terms of the convergence and influence from a threat landscape. The third, as Sir rightly pointed out at the beginning, I think fraud or transaction fraud continues to be one of the biggest issue that we see globally. So is ransomware and extortion. And surprisingly, ransomware has also kind of evolved. It's kind of evolving into a little bit of different form and shape. But of course, these are some of the trends that we are seeing. And lastly, I think the threat actors remain very, very agile. The new tools, frameworks, capabilities of and some of the new methods that they have developed, of course they are very, very new, very, very critical in that sense to go with. So some other key themes that we are seeing. I think one which is very, very critical is the compromise of identities. Now, whether it is related to cloud, whether it is related to on-prem, whether it is related to privileged identities, cloud and identity remain the largest target across the globe. And this is a global indicator. It's not just domestic. So we are no different, and we will kind of go through or see similar kind of trends. In terms of the ransomware, I think we are still looking at a very, very steady ransom attack kind of a ecosystem. The watermark is very high, and we still see even today a lot of entities getting impacted by ransomware here and now, both in the financial and non-financial sector. So while financial sector remains the primary impact point, we still see that ransomwares do remain kind of very, very focused. And the last part is the financial motivation, which is the most critical part. Even with so much of different industries getting impacted, 63% of the incidents still remain very, very uh, focused from a financial motivation perspective. So financial motivation remains consistent. Ransomwares remain at a very high watermark. The geopolitical issues remain very, very current, concurrent in the way we see the entire threat ecosystem evolving. And identity and cloud remain the most impacted or the most compromised or the most sought after assets or technology assets that get compromised from a ecosystem perspective. So looking at the geopolitical influence, now I will talk through some of the use cases. I don't want to go through each line item, but I have picked about 3 or 4 cases that I will kind of cover. And of course, then I have, as part C, I will cover some of the newer factors that we are seeing from a use case perspective. So from a Russian invasion perspective, sabotage, vipers, phishing, and cybercrime remain very, very active. Hacktivism again remains very, very active. And I will talk about Vipers in the next slide, and a couple of slides I'll cover some of the other topics. From the China-based threat actors, we feel that there are a bunch of groups, whether it's Skilla, whether it's Relay, whether it's the Shadowpad technologies that are getting used. Uh, those are very, very pertinent from Chinese hacker ecosystem perspective. The third aspect within China that we are looking at is the even the telecommunications ecosystem is being targeted very, very actively. Now, what happens is telecom being backbone, once that propagates into the telecommunication ecosystem, of course, there is downside impact on financials and other kind of ecosystems and industries as well. While I'll not talk too much of Iran, but uh, but sabotage, sanctions, sectoral targeting remains very, very active from an Iran perspective. And North Korea is very interesting, and I'll talk through 1 or 2 use cases on North Korea. But these are the most commonly used hacker profile groups where many of these new age hacking ecosystems are kind of evolving. And I call it ecosystem because it's not a play of a one person or a single person, but there's a group of people that continue to kind of build the entire ransomware, if I can say so. So just look at, and just coming to Vipers now, for the last year or so, we've been kind of looking at a variety of attacks. And when the Russian attack happened, the first thing that actually kind of we saw was the entire NotPetya kind of ransomware ecosystems that were kind of getting deployed. But interestingly, those were not ransomwares. The new age terminal or whatever, the new terminology for this is Wiperware. And what basically it's doing is it makes the data completely irreversible once it kind of attaches to an ecosystem. So there are different versions of it. There's a WhisperGate, there's a Hermetic Viper, there's a Caddy, there's a Control Zero. But essentially, unlike a ransomware, a Viperware is a little different. In a ransomware, the data remains encrypted, but the data remains. There is a methodology. If you pay for a ransom or there is a key that you identify, then you will be able to kind of recover that data. But what we are seeing in the entire Viperware is basically that data is just destructed. There is no way to recover that data. That data becomes useless. Those machines become non-usable unless the only way that you do it is completely formatted, and of course that data is not going to come back. This is predominantly focusing on creating pain in the ecosystem. There is no financial impact that somebody is trying to create, but it's the impact of non-availability that is kind of really driven through the Vipers ecosystem. Am I audible now or the voice is low?
I think we are okay with your level of audacity, but some people are reporting some audio issue. We are looking into that. I think,
But I think that I see a lot of people saying audible, so maybe it's a one-off.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amol will go ahead.
Yeah. So what we did is maybe over the last 1 year, we did a complete analysis of a lot of Viperware that we were seeing across the ecosystem. Now, what you see on the inside circle, and maybe I can point it out, like let's say the defense evasion. Now that is a type of tactic that is kind of being used by the hackers. What you see as the small indicators that we have on the slide are the techniques that multiple people are using, and what you see in the bracket are some of the rules that kind of have been identified. So somebody has raised a hand. If there is a topical question right now, we can wait, and if it's not so, then I will continue. So
Amolji, I think I will make one request once again to all the participants. They can put their questions in the chat box, and we can take it up simultaneously, at the end of the, your deliberations.
yeah,
Will that?
all the members I have kept about 35-40 minutes. Trust me, I will try and finish off in the first 25-30 minutes, and then we will take questions. So just in case there are questions, please hold on. So what I was trying to say is there are tactics which are the inner circle, and then there are techniques which is the outer circle. And there are methods or detection rules that we've identified for each of these. So just to give an example, let's say defense evasion and modify registry as an example. So defense evasion, there are 310 possible techniques to protect, and let's say modify registry is a subset. So based on all the Wiperwares that we've analyzed over a period of time, we have also identified the specific actionables, or what are the detection rules that need to be applied or implemented by various SIM, SOC, EDR kind of ecosystems to protect against some of these Viperwares. Uh, and just I saw a question again coming. This PPT will come to you. There is a link. You can use that link and download a customized report for you based on the industry, sub-industry that you have. So yes, the PPT and the link to download the report will come to you after this presentation. So there are multiple defense techniques that need to be evolved, and there has to be a well thought through mechanism. And as our own red teams, as our own teams, defense teams, we will have to identify what are the specific data points, indicators, let's say defense mechanisms that are weak, and then work on that. So the message is, ransomwares, when the war started, they were kind of converted into Viperwares. Viperwares are essentially kind of wiping out data rather than encrypting it and putting into different in an encrypted format. Unfortunately, Viperwares, the thing that we've seen, data is not retrievable or systems are not retrievable. And the last message is there are tactics, techniques, methods that all banks or institutions can kind of devise to protect against these new age ecosystems. So basically, it's a play of cat and mouse. So obviously, I'm sure each of you have your own techniques, but essential for everyone to know that. The second part which I would talk about, I covered one case study on the Russian side, I'll cover one on the Chinese side. Don't get bogged down by what is red Skyla or whatever. Okay, so there, when you download the report, there are indicators of what is red, what is blue, what is black, what is orange. So don't get bogged down by those terminologies. So on the Chinese side, what we are seeing is, I think there is a lot of backdoor custom malwares, tools, which are getting commonly shared across the entire Chinese hacking community. Two methods, Shadowpad and PlugX, are the most used methods that we are seeing from the Chinese side of the whole attack ecosystem. If you look at the world map that's there, the world map basically demonstrates how many places they've been able to successfully recon or scan or recon and compromise. So if you look at it, uh, maybe the majority of the effort today is towards the US and some of the European entities, because that's where currently they feel that that's the geopolitical balance that they're trying to maintain. But it's weaponized enough to be used against us as well. And the essential point here is, look at some of these reports, look at some of these new age vectors, and see how well you are prepared or how well you are equipped to handle some of these tools and techniques that are already there in the wild. So essential message here is, the US ecosystem is fairly impacted by some of these tools, techniques that these guys have developed. Um, World over, tools, techniques will remain common. World over, methodologies will remain common. So if one country A is able to breach defenses of country B through set of tools and techniques, let's learn from those tools and techniques and see how we can be prepared just in case there's an attack, or just in case there's a similar type of ecosystem that's getting used against us. So the message is, there are well developed tools available, custom backdoors available. Those custom backdoors are already kind of being used to compromise some of these ecosystems. And let's be really get ready for that component. Going to the next slide, there are again, these are techniques. This slide deck will come to you. There is a MITRE attack framework. There is a specific number T1204.002, which is already identified. So when you kind of look at your own ecosystem, do look at some of these indicators that I have put in. Of course, I have not put in the exact methods. I've just given the links to the specific techniques that can be kind of used. Coming to the third country, which is North Korea, we see that there are three typical targets that are there from a North Korea perspective. One is cryptocurrency exchanges, second is venture capitals, and third is startup organizations. The reason to bring up this slide is, today, as a banking or the financial service industry, we see a lot of startups. We'll see a lot of tech-enabled entities getting connected to us. We see a lot of venture-backed ecosystems that are kind of highly tech-ready, whom we use in our ecosystem to kind of either extend digital lending. We are using different platforms. We are using different solutions either on the data side, on lending side, on acquisition side, on customer retention side, on the whole analytics. The message is, they are quite susceptible to some of these new age uh, operations, which are basically called operation money. We've seen a very, very high target um, success from North Korea on some of these ecosystems. So when we are looking at, and when we are integrated with some of these startup organizations, and I'll not call them as anything like fintechs or whatever, but most of the startup organizations, they are victim to the whole North Korean operation money that we are seeing. Um, Classic methods are largely phishing emails, because there is a high propensity of change in some of these startup organizations, and some of them are also connecting to link files that kind of get created as part of the MSI installers. So again, across the three parts, I talked about Russia from a Wiperware. I talked about China in terms of the sky call that we talked about operation money. So from a geopolitical perspective, these are the last three themes that we are seeing world over, which are kind of really driving. Now coming to some of the cybercrime trends, and as I said, the first is ransomware that will continue to evolve. We don't see the water levels or the watermark going down anytime soon. It's going to be very, very uh, it's a continuous kind of attack scenario. Second is the whole underground ecosystem is now very, very prevalent in sharing tooling. And second is there is a lot of ecosystem that is got created, which is also called as a service. And I will talk about some of those that we are seeing. But basically, the techniques and tools through a very, very complex proxy-based networks today is kind of getting proliferated. This is kind of getting shared across different hacking groups. And what they're doing is earlier to set up like a phishing site, it took at least some time for them to run certain things. Now these services are being developed and created in a closed door ecosystem as a service, which these organizations or these crime syndicates are basically using very, very actively. I think social engineering and credential stealing, and I did talk about it, but credential stealing remains the most active method to kind of compromise systems. Do what we can, but unless we have a very, very active multi-factor, we have a strong identity governance, this is going to be very, very concerning. And lastly, I think the cyber enabled fraud and commoditization of actions and exploits will kind of remain very, very common. So four or five key terms that we are seeing in the whole cyber ecosystem or cyber crime group is one is access as a service. Now today, when we are looking at a lot of things, there are two methods that are kind of evolving, which are readily available for the whole hacker community. One is there is something called initial access broker. So for some tokens or for some bitcoins, there is a method that is kind of getting evolved that you may get an initial access broker to any entity of your choice. And the second is they are also doing access as service where a malware delivery is also kind of promised at a certain token. So basically, what I'm trying to say is today you can go and shop to say that okay, for this enterprise I need an initial access broker or I need a malware delivery delivered in one of the systems that I have control of. So that kind of a complete ecosystem is kind of getting set up. The second is distributed denial service or DDoS, as it's commonly called. So, in the past, there were a lot of ecosystems like Amazon, Azure, GCPs, which were actually used for also kind of ethically test the whole DDoS ecosystem. But because of certain challenges, there were some certain limitations that were brought in terms of how much data that they can pump and what kind of DDoS that they can create. But as a next step, what has happened is because they have control, so the whole cyber ecosystem has control of so many machines that now DDoS for hire as a service is kind of being delivered by them. And there are cases even in India where DDoS has either happened, there have been attempts, there have been website downtimes. So things are certainly happening, and some of these could be kind of outcome of some of these as a service possibilities. Similar phishing, ransomware as a service, data broker. You want data, high fidelity data about a customer. Today, the hacker groups are giving you an option to actually search in their database with high with high accuracy exactly what you want, and that's coming as a data broker as a service. So there are many as a service solutions that are evolving, and basically all it means is we need to be better ready or better equipped to handle some of these. Just as an example, and I don't want to kind of take much time, but this is just a very, very standard use case that we are seeing on a ransomware as a service. So there is a privilege account compromise. There is a method to laterally move, and then there is an exfiltration and ransomware mechanism. All these mechanisms that we have written below that dark gray line is basically all the as a service components that are now being readied by the entire hacking group. So essentially what we are saying is ransomware is not just about compromised privilege accounts, but they're also helping you with lateral movement. They're also helping you with sensitive data exfiltration, and they're also helping you with ransomware encryption decryption keys to be delivered as a last resort in the whole program. So I talked about all those services. This is just one example. As I said, when you go through the report, you will find more details on some of the other services. But this is just one method that we've been seeing, which is very, very prevalent and very widely used today from a global ecosystem. Uh, as I said, between 2021 2022, we do not see any reduction in the entire ransomware challenge. It remains very, very significant, very, very high, and it will continue to evolve even in 2023 as per our predictions. I'm just going to talk about two, three case studies very, very quickly, and then we will get on to questions. I'm just mindful of time. I'll just talk about two or three case studies. One is on Log4, Log4 shell. Second is on multi-factor, and third is about some of the toolings that we are seeing. Just on the first case study, it is from a hacking group called Black Alchemist. Basically, they are, and this is kind of continues, and these are some of the real life use cases that we are continuously kind of looking at. We've done the analysis ourselves, and we know exactly how it has happened. But just to give an outside in view, there were Log4j components that were vulnerable, which were on the network, or there were certain exposed VMware clients. There were EXEs that were loaded in the memory. Those are called DTRAC. Through the EXEs, there were certain auto run key and startup services that were embedded by the hackers. And once the in-memory tools were dropped, then additional tools like Putty, Flynet, WinRAR, InfoStealer, etc. were all kind of delivered in the ecosystem. And then how to compress the file, how to set up the C2C servers, connectivities, and all of that. That was very, very standard method. Again, in this deck, I have captured some of the learnings for the incidents, what methods that one can use. But of course, you can go through the detailed report and you can kind of figure out what is the best methodology for you to kind of take it forward. The next one, let's skip. I'm just conscious of time, but yeah, maybe I'll take 2 seconds on this, or maybe 30 seconds. Macros in Excel or other Microsoft tools, those were disabled in 2022. What has happened is the hackers have kind of evolved their techniques. Now they are delivering the same sophistication through ISO files or links. What it means is when you create the images, there are certain things that are getting embedded as part of the images for the endpoints, and that is where you basically kind of get the initial access even before some of your ecosystems are kind of delivered. So again, the kill chain of how this is happening, what are the components, it is kind of embedded in the PPT. So you can kindly go through that. I will not spend time. Let's go through the last one. So this is very unique in a sense that there were proxy shells or web shells that people kind of embedded on Exchange servers of some of the enterprises. Through that, there were certain web shells that were taken. And then a bunch of tools like RDP facilitator, GoToAssist, Putty, again, Putty, a very common tool in terms of the whole impact. So some of these were embedded through methods, and then lateral movement, information gathering, persistence, exfiltration, all of that was done. Essentially, once there is a C2C connection or once there is a compromise in the ecosystem, the next steps of whether it's a Wiperware, whether it's a ransomware, whether it's getting used for data exfiltration or whether it's getting used for something else which is covert or overt, that will remain a choice of the hackers. But essentially, these are some of the compromises that we have seen lately that have been happening. So again, there are a bunch of initial access vectors, there are persistence vectors, and there are exfiltration vectors that we've talked through. In the context of your environment, you may want to kind of contextualize and go through some of these ecosystems. So as I just said in the beginning, again, I will share the link. You can download the report. I will send this PPT that I just curated from the report. Please feel free to kind of go through that. And if there are questions, you can also certainly write back to me in terms of the various aspects that you would like to discuss. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go to questions. So happy to take questions or happy to uh, take chat questions that may have come through. So okay. So let me take the first question. Could you explain? Okay, ISO is basically, let's say, when you create an image for hardening of your laptops, or when you are creating an ISO image. ISO image is nothing but a method to create your environment on a laptop, on a server, or any Windows bootable device. So that is a ISO image. Uh, it is typically stored in the imaging mechanism. It could be a semantic box. It could be many other ISO methods that are evolved. Essentially, what is happening is there is a trigger in the ISO that kind of gets loaded by the hackers, and that is where the control is compromised even before the image is getting created. So those are some use cases that we are seeing. Okay, Nilesh Matre sir, what do you think immediate threats to India? Okay, so I think from an India geography perspective, we should look at what happened to, let's say, the Ukraine ecosystem after the Russia war. I'm not saying that we are at war, but essentially the hacker community will learn with some of these tips and techniques that were used by the Russian hackers against Ukraine, and of course, the proliferation of all of this will happen across the globe. So we should look at some of these, the circle that I presented. You should look at how well you are equipped to handle some of these new age Viperwares or whatever they are called uh, in different terminologies, and really look at how we are ready. The second part that I will say what we should be ready for is, as I said, most of the startup ecosystems will remain vulnerable because they will not have as good security practices as what some of the uh, I will say matured banking institutions will have in India, because we have a fairly broad oversight both from within the board, within the management, from RBI. So there's fair bit of focus on security for us to operate, but that same level of focus may not be there for some of the new age entrants, new age ecosystems that come and connect with us. I'm not saying that they are going to essentially become a risk tomorrow, but we should be mindful of some of the risks emanating uh, from from them into to us. Okay. I would know whether any particular product of SIMWAF has detected this Viperware. So as I said, there is no single tip on technique. There are multiple techniques for the Viperware. It depends on where you want to associate or where you want to implement those controls. So if you kind of have threat intelligence feed from any specific service provider, they should be able to give you specific data points of what to implement and how to implement uh, across various use cases. Okay, what are the how to find QR code based frauds in real time for payments on shop or merchant? Okay, not a direct topic for me to discuss. But yeah, I have heard that there are multiple QR codes which are there, which are being used for wrong purposes. So I will not talk about any. So I've been associated with one or two QR code based issues, but maybe this is not the right forum that I could kind of open up and give more details. Uh, but yes, if you have a specific question, you can send it to me. I can do a one-on-one 15-20 minute session on some of the evolving threats that we've looked at from a QR code based perspective. Okay. What are the ways and timelines to report and take down sensitive data on dark web, dark forum? Okay. So you can kind of sign up for takedown services, or you can sign up for dark web monitoring. The question about is it possible to eradicate all the sensitive data that is available on dark web and dark forum? That is left to everyone's judgment, because if there are hundreds of copies that are already made and those are stored across the ecosystem, it is very difficult to necessarily 100% take down all the sensitive data of organization on a dark web or a dark forum. But what I can say is, if you have these scanning services, if you see any kind of traces of data that relates to your organization, and I'm sure not many would kind of find that, but there will your dark web service providers should be able to help you with certain degree of remediation. 100% remediation not possible. Let's not kind of think that 100% identification also is not possible. So to that extent, services are available. Services will give you certain insights. Those insights will be useful for you to take down certain data sets, but there could always be more data sets which are not visible through scanning techniques that will remain in the ecosystem. Okay, Mahesh, which are the key points should be considered while taking cyber insurance? Okay. Uh, See, cyber insurance, in my view, is a outcome of security practices that you have implemented. Uh, so insurance is always, I will say, um, it is aligned to your practice. So if your practices are poor, insurance is going to be high. If your practices are better, insurance is going to be lesser. But essentially, what is the possible cyber impact, or what is the cost that the institution can basically have to take if there's a breach? That is a critical assessment for each institution to do. So let's say for a very large organization, even 500 crores may be a very small amount, and for a very small bank, even 50 crores may be a very large account. So, points to consider is your security practices, your process controls, strength of your governance will all be, so it's inversely proportional. So, better controls, lesser insurance, bad controls, higher insurance. But look at value of insurance, look at your controls, and look at what is covered from a coverage perspective, because typically what I have heard, and I have not dealt with cyber insurance myself directly, but first party is not covered. So if the loss is for self, then that anyways is not covered. So to that extent, these are the three things that I will suggest that you should take care of when kind of taking the cyber insurance. Okay. What three important measures banks should minimize chances of these attacks succeeding? Okay. So as I said, one is know your perimeter. You need to know what and how well your perimeter controls are implemented. Two, perimeter will only give you preventive controls. You need to have the detective controls embedded in your SIM, XDR, EDR, any other system through which you can detect these environments. And third is, I think, knowledge. uh, I just talked about 3 or 4 cases. It's impossible to talk about hundreds of cases that are happening globally. But essence is, while we think of future, we should also look at past in terms of what is happening across our ecosystem to identify what are the most possible areas which could get compromised. So I will first start with what are the possible methods that I can get compromised, to look at my preventive controls that I've implemented to say, okay, these are the preventive controls that will protect me possibly when an attack happens. And third is have a very strong detect mechanism wherein I've embedded these techniques, or where I'm embedded these measures, Yara rules, any kind of intelligence in my SIM-SOC, so that even if the first defense fails, I will still have a mechanism to detect the outcomes that are coming. So those would be in uh, my view the most critical ones to kind of think through. If you are kind of thinking of that, okay. I missed some questions. I think this had come also. A bit surprised that cloud ecosystem is more vulnerable. Okay, I always thought I am more rugged and robust than systems hosted privately in data centers. Okay, so Sharad, cloud is robust from an availability perspective. Let's kind of split the whole conversation into three parts: confidentiality, integrity, availability. I think availability wise, cloud will be the most robust ecosystem. So in that sense, your understanding of robustness of the cloud is very, very consistent. But the second part and the third part, confidentiality and integrity. For confidentiality, it is left for your judgment what controls you want to put on cloud. So cloud by default is not going to give you bunch of security measures that are pre-configured for you. They will give you availability measures. So let me define what it is. Your data in cloud will not get lost for whatever reason because there's very high resilience. But your data on cloud can still get compromised because you didn't encrypt the data, or your passwords were compromised, or your accounts were compromised, or you didn't put the right perimeter controls on cloud. So cloud by itself will not give you any design controls for confidentiality and integrity. They will give you for availability. Integrity and confidentiality you have to work through in the context of your ecosystem to build those controls. Again, cloud will have same problems. We have seen admin account delegation related problems that have happened. We have seen account compromise on clouds. We have seen S3 buckets getting compromised. We are seeing data getting exfiltrated. So don't think that cloud is secure. Cloud is only secure from an availability perspective, not from a confidentiality and integrity perspective. Okay. RK, how India fares to other nations in terms of skill research? Okay. I think skill wise, I don't think we are any different than some of the other nations. And I will again kind of split this discussion into two parts. Skill levels are fairly high. Skill levels, we are getting good content in people in terms of the capabilities to manage. The only problem that we see where we are faltering today is the diligence through which we follow the process mandates. So, if you are asking me what is the degree of cloud competence of resources in India, I will say it's fairly high. As a consulting firm, I can tell you 80% of our resources working in India are ready for our international market. What it means is 80, if I send 10 CVs to my global teams, 8 CVs by default are getting selected because of competence. So I don't think competence is a problem. If there is a problem, it's about governance. The problem is about putting the right processes in place and making sure that those processes are followed to the T when we do changes, when we do new rollouts, when we do ecosystem changes, so on and so forth. So, competence wise, I think we are fairly skilled. It could be an intent problem in a certain person to not deliver certain things, but I am very confident of the skill of the resources that we have in India, and I think all of us should be very proud of the way we've kind of skilled our people on this count. Uh, Okay, what would be the digital banks and transactions coming time and remedy for the same? I think digital banks, the biggest thing is, in my view, identity compromise. And on transactions, it's as sir said, when my numerator and denominators are growing and when my number of transactions are growing so much, but the number of fraud transactions to number of average number of transactions is going down, that means the propensity of fraud happening is growing at much more higher degree than the growth of number of online transactions. What it essentially means is the fraud transactions are growing at, let's say, 40% on an annualized basis, while my growth of transactions is only at 20%. So fraud transactions, fraud profiles, fraud identities, and the whole logic of how do I do the whole credit appraisal, how do I do the whole digital banking, zero touch model. I think those are the two or three components that I see are the most vulnerable components. Because traditionally, and not a context here, but let's say insurance companies always had a high touch ecosystem in the past, where their people used to go and actually see the customers. As soon as that has changed, at least in the insurance sector, the number of fraud policies itself has gone many times. If I apply the same logic in the digital economy for the digital ecosystem, as soon as my touch point levels, which are physical touch point levels, go down significantly, fraud profiles, fraud accounts, fraud transactions are going to go up many times. So I think that that is the way to look forward or be very mindful of, as far as digital banks or the associated risk on banking transactions which are online that are going to come. Okay, next, mobile banking offered by what are the cybercrime issues and techniques to avoid as a general user? Okay, general user, I think three things. One of that is already getting addressed by the government, which is the IMEI based frauds. There is already a task force that has been set up. We will, and I think it's going live on the 27th of May, if I have read it right. So the IMEI frauds will go down, but we still need to be very aware of SIM swaps. And second is very mindful of both phishing and phishing calls across. So as an end user, the only cure that I have is protect my identity and protect my credentials. Identity, I think if you have a very robust ecosystem that you use, whether it's Android or Google, sorry, Android or Apple, and you have kind of signed up through the right mechanisms, and with IMEI controls coming in, that part will get covered. But my credentials and my identity, which is a combination of phishing, wishing, smishing kind of things. I think that's a general user that I will say that we should be very mindful of. Okay, is there in threat to my robust robots.txt file on my website, which is required for crawling? Hacker may hack so that my crawling would not get completed, which may impact on my SEO score. Okay, so we will have to look at under what credential the robots.txt file is running. We'll also have to look at the hygiene of the server or the specific device on which it is running. Um, and then we can create, or then we can make an estimated guess of whether that can be compromised. But I will say that there is a high possibility that if somebody really wants to compromise that, it could possibly be compromised if it is not running with the right credentials and right controls. So yes, it can be kind of be a tricky scenario in that sense. Okay. While banks, let's go to the next. While banks have some tools, controls to detect ransomware, in your view, what are the top three to ransomware threat emulating considering the current threat landscape? Okay. I think ransomware, everybody is kind of signed up to the fact that EDRs are pretty much the way forward. Uh, EDRs with telemetry data, with right set of SIMSOC engineering, with right set of TTPs, right set of rules that you have kind of configured on your SIEM and maybe XDR, whatever you may have. Uh, that will be the method, or those will be the methods to detect and prevent ransomware. That's the start point. And as I said, it's a cat and mouse game. It's going to get complex by the day. It's not going to be easy. So those would be five: EDR, telemetry, SIM integration, TTPs, YARA rules, associated techniques embedded, and then the SIM engineering that you need to do will really solve this specific problem. Okay. Hi, this is okay. Sir, according to which is the biggest cyber threat banking are facing times to come remedy for the same? I think DDoS, ransomware, identity compromise, account takeovers would be the top three or four in my mind, which we should be very, very mindful of. Okay. Any must have AI/ML techniques for financial institutions. Okay. Um, See, AI/ML, I will break the whole thing into maybe four buckets. One was basic automation. Second was maybe a little bit of end-to-end automation with certain degree of logic built in. Third was, uh, I will say, the intelligent decision making that was embedded in the tool. And the fourth is, how do I now look at the whole process end to end without a broken integration? And how do I embed passwords, credentials, methods, logics, all of that? So on the AIML side, one is how are you kind of protecting your credentials and how are you protecting um, some of the embedded certificates? That is one. Second is, if you are talking about AI ML from a normative behavior perspective and saying that I will use AI ML techniques for SOC or for some of the fraud detection techniques, uh, the most critical part is what is a normative behavior definition. That is very critical for any AI ML. So in the first four things that I talked about, the last two, it's about identity, it's about embedded credentials, it's about embedded certificates, it's all about embedded logics that are built in. But if it is used for any anomaly detection, what is a normative? Defining that normative is the biggest threat from an AI/ML perspective. So those are the two things that I will recommend that you should look at from a financial institution perspective. Okay, DDoS are significant threats right now. Many attackers we must determine how to exploit these attacks to prevent an incident and how to mitigate. Okay. Any method available for threat and control in real time? Any method or mechanism to? Okay, I'm not very clear of this question. I will skip it. Uh, how can banks effectively manage customer service reduces those who are not tech savvy? Okay, I think some of the banks have taken really good steps on that. This is to the communication to customer question. Some of the banks have really taken very good steps. I will recommend, please do look at some of the large public private sector banks. There are good techniques that they have evolved. There is a very structured communication channel that they have established. Uh, and there are very good institutions who have worked with them to really address some of these challenges in terms of reaching out to reaching out to the tier 2, tier 3 customers who are not tech savvy or English savvy. So to that extent, I will say that we can learn from some of the large banks that are already have set this up. Because this is a very large topic, there are many ways, methods that one can use and apply, but it's essential that you need to align it to your size and scale. What are the best practices? Okay, so the best practices for Wiperware Scala, as I said, please download the report. They are all embedded in that. Suggest course study that should be undertaken by banks. I'm not sure in what context are these courses and certifications, but yeah, there are a bunch of certifications on cloud, on some of the others that you can kind of look at. Okay, is there any CNC prevention available in CNC? Uh, there's no direct answer whether it's available in firewall. Firewall at the end is a device which will segregate your internal and external boundary, but nothing else. So to that extent, CNC prevention directly on firewall may be difficult, because today it's talking to AIP. In few hours, it will start talking to BIP. So very difficult to do it on a firewall. Okay, Ravi Mishra, is there a difference between? Okay, cyber warfare is a generic term. Espionage is country specific, industry specific, enterprise specific. So to that extent, methods and techniques will be same, but the purpose will be very different. So purpose of espionage could be very different from a warfare. So that is what I will say. So, sir, do we have time, right? Maybe I can stretch for another 5-6 minutes if that is okay. I see a bunch of good
Yes,
questions.
sure. Sure.
Okay. Okay, pertaining to, may I know, sorry, may I know best source of information for cyber threat and prevention? Best source of information to cyber threat and the prevention. Okay, so source is, see, there are many things to look at. I don't know if there is a Bhagavad Gita of cyber as yet. I don't think so. That's available where you can just look at one document and say this is the ultimate truth. No, that is not possible. But you have to really look at different techniques and mechanisms to really make sure that uh, the threats are prevented. Okay, is it safe to deploy banking applications in cloud? Okay, I don't see there is any specific threat if you have the right controls and checks and balances. So it is like asking, can I go and sit in the sun in the middle of the summer? Uh, yeah, you can if you have the preventive techniques that you can do. So yeah, I don't think there is any negative sentiment either from regulators or anywhere that banking applications is not safe to uh, deploy on cloud. I have at least personally not come across these. So as long as you have techniques and processes and perimeters built out well, there is no problem. Okay, very insightful info and we feel geolocation parameters might would help. Okay, good question. So geolocation parameters in the old world were very good. Today there is so much of obfuscation that is happening on the network that even the traffic may come from a negative territory, it is coming with a stamped IP of a positive territory. So let's say I am a hacker from China. I have taken these proxy or the other shadow pad kind of techniques that I was talking through. You will basically get a IP of a non-Chinese origin, and hence to that extent that geolocation parameters may not be very useful for you in the short run. So it's a good mechanism, but with some of these evolved techniques, geo parameters, geolocations, parameters around X-rated countries, that may not be anymore a good control. It should be as part of your firewall rules for sure, but you can't kind of rely on those to say that that will kind of uh, uh, address your problem. Any mechanism to find cyber threat and control in real time? Any mechanism to find threat? Yeah, SOC, SIM, SOC, EDRs, XDRs are all techniques for real time threat. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think we've taken about 5 more minutes for all the members. So I'll take a pause. Thank you so much, all the people who joined from different banks. It was pleasure. Look forward. You can kind of send me questions on my email ID. As I said, we will circulate the PPT in a PDF format, and I will also share a link where you can download the report. Hope it is useful, and hope the session was useful. Look forward, and thank you IBA again. Thanks for this opportunity. Look forward to support you, and back to you, sir.
Many thanks, Shri Amol Bhatt. And there were two questions which were relevant to IBA. One was regarding the community cloud. I will request our senior advisor, Shri K. Srinivasa Rao, to answer this question.
Regarding community cloud, the question was whether IBA is pushing for community cloud. Yes, definitely. Recently, we had some discussions with the Reserve Bank of India also. Shortly, I think some communication will come. That's why I'm hoping that.
And the second question was, IBA should arrange similar sessions on other subjects also. I think we'll continue to do this.
Yes, we can continue to do it.
So the webinar is available on YouTube channel. So those who want to view it again, they are most welcome. They can go to our YouTube channel and watch it. PPT, as assured by Shri Amol Bhatt, will be circulated. So it will be available to all the members. Amolji and all the participants, this session was very insightful and very relevant for the bankers and those who are in the financial sector. The large number of queries covering full spectrum of the issue reflects the keen interest envisaged events by our participants and the relevance of the topic. I thank Shri Amol Bhatt and all the participants for this lively session and very active interaction. Thanks to you, Amolji, once again, very much.
Thank you, sir.
And on behalf of all the participants. And thanks to all the participants also for their active participation. And thanks to the IT team in IBA, which has made all these arrangements. Thank you, Srinivasa Raoji, and thanks to other members. Thank you very much. So with this, we conclude this webinar.